and welcome to Coffee and Politics. Thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel. My name is Sean and I live in the southeast of England. I'm a member of the Labour Party and I position myself firmly in the centre. I would say I'm a centrist really. So what I want to speak about today is concerning the Labour Party and in particularly those on the far left of the party and those members of Parliament. And of course, I'm talking about those in the Socialist Campaign group of MPs and those who have been at these Enough is Enough rallies. Now, why I think Keir needs to completely ignore them, I would go one step further and kick them all out the party, really, because they're constantly undermining his leadership, and we know who they are. They're always the same people. They're the likes of John Trickett, Diane Abbott, Richard Bergen, Sam Terry. The list goes on, and quite frankly, they've never accepted Keir as leader. They belong to the cult of Jeremy Corbyn, I'm afraid, and they bought so much into his ideologies. They think they should be imposing that on Starmer and imposing that on what the Labour Party is doing now. Well, that would just be suicidal in my view, because at the moment Labour's going in the right direction to sort of putting themselves as the party of the centre. We've seen the Tories have recently more alert to the right with Liz Truss, and we're yet to really see what Rishi Sunak will do. But with Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, that again is leaning towards the right. So I think Keir is right to position the Labour Party in the centre. For me, that's where they should always be. And I detested the Jeremy Corbyn years. I remained member, but I wasn't proud to be a member of the Labour Party at the time. And under Keir Starmer, he's completely sort of rebellised the Labour Party, really. And he's put the Labour Party back as a serious party, again on the centre ground, and one that looks like a government in waiting, I have to say. Now, why I think the far left are doing damage to the Labour Party, again, I mentioned it at the start, they're sort of always undermining Keir Starmer, and ultimately, if I was him, I'd be a lot more tougher on them and just not take any of their silly ideology, really, because that's what it is in my view. Now, we've seen constituencies sort of dispel that and get rid of those MPs. Sam Terry is the one that springs to mind. He's recently been deselected for Ilford, and Jazz Artewell will be the new MP at the next election. So ultimately, their ideologies no longer resonate with many Labour members. And I think the trouble that they've got is because social media, especially Twitter's a vital place at the best of times, but a lot of them have fairly big followings, unfortunately, and therefore people sort of taint everyone in Labour with the same brush, that their sort of woke sort of ideology is where they're against wealthy people and there's all should be all these wealth taxes, and ultimately their thinking is they want to punish people with wealth. I don't have wealth, but I certainly don't begrudge people that do, and I certainly don't want to treat them like criminals, which ultimately that's what they want to do. And I think the problem that we've got in the Labour Party especially is they're still trying to sort of get their grip on the party, even though Keir Starmer doesn't agree with their ideology. Most people don't. They can't seem to fathom that the party isn't like that anymore. It's not 2017 under Jeremy Corbyn, so it's a bit frustrating as a Labour member, and as I say, to be tainted with that brush. That sort of their views are sort of across the board. That's not the case. I'm sure it's the same for other political parties as well. But it's just a bit frustrating, really, because a lot of us don't believe all the stuff that they spout, and it's embarrassing for us actually to sort of see it. And then you often get credible journalists that I rate, and they sort of say that this is what Labour will be like in government, when that's actually not the case. It's just a few individuals that, as I say, have a big presence on Twitter, and yeah, it's just very unfortunate. And I hope, well, I did hope that they would leave Labour when Jeremy Corbyn got the whip removed, but unfortunately they didn't. So looks like we're going to be stuck with them. And unfortunately, again, I think that will be a problem in the next Labour government. If that's in 2 years or 2 months, who knows at the moment. But yeah, we've seen it with the Tories, with the likes of the ERG, the One Nation Tories. They sort of have their factions in the Tory party, like Labour do. But the trouble is, Labour, and the way that these people act in particular, these MPs, they will be all over the news because when the party's in government, they naturally get more airtime, they naturally get more interviews offered to them. So I think, unfortunately, just like the Tories split, argue, and it's all their dirty laundry's there, I think that will be the same case for Labour if and when they're in government because of the same reasons, I guess. One of the things I would have liked to see was a few more deselections and more moderate people coming to the party to stand in those constituencies. We've seen one of the prominent left wingers that they won their re-selection, so unfortunately that's not the case with them. But ultimately, when Labour have been in government, they've been moderate MPs, not far left wingers. Tony Blair was never a far left winger, neither was Gordon Brown. And these MPs, I think they're actually dangerous, not just to the Labour Party, but if they ever got in or served in cabinet, I think their ideology and the way that they see things will be dangerous to society, really, because some of the stuff that I see on Twitter from them is just unbelievable. You know, I guess Richard Bergen's one of them. You got John Trickett, as I mentioned, John McDonnell, Diane Abbott. That well, there's an argument to say they would be a danger to national security, really. And unfortunately, again, within Labour, that's a problem they've got is to try and keep them at bay and keep more of the moderate MPs sort of in the front and centre, I guess. And we've seen this with other parties. That will be a big problem for Labour, I fear. So the other thing I wanted to mention as well, I've mentioned the ideology already and how people get tarnished with the same brush. Where we see one of the far left wingers when Richie Sunak was appointed the Prime Minister the other day. They sort of said, oh, well, that's not a good look for Asians because of his wealth and his background. And unfortunately, he can't help what he inherited or what he was born into. But, to say that's a disgrace to the Asian community is absolutely out of order. And I guess, in a way, you could say it's racist. And unfortunately, these are the people we have in our party. And these are the people that we don't want sort of airing these views out in the public. The MP that did tweet that did delete it in the end. But unfortunately, this is a problem, as I say, we've got. And they shouldn't be silenced totally because obviously everyone's got their right to their free speech and they can say what they like. But ultimately, it just drags Labour through the mud a bit, and people may get the impression that we're all like that or we all think that, and that's absolutely not the case. As I say, I have nothing against wealthy people. If they pay their tax in this country, fine. Make as much money as you want because ultimately that money is going to be going back into the public services that we need, and it's going to be going back into the treasury. So, this again ideology that some people have got in Labour that wealth is bad, and if you make a certain amount of money, you've got to be taxed even more on your. Yeah, I just don't agree with it, and again, it's one of their ideologies and one of their main things that they talk about that gets tarnished around everyone in Labour thinks the same. So yeah, ultimately, it's a bit of a shame that they're associated with my party really because they just bring it in the bad name and their silly ideas and ways of thinking. They get associated with us moderates and us people that are actually quite centrally grounded, and they just want a moderate government and a moderate Labour government. And I think that's another problem we've got. So if I was Keir, anyone that disobeys him, particularly those guys, I would just remove the whip from. Hope that they face a deselection battle, and hope that we can get more moderate Labour MPs like the likes of Peter Cole, Wade Streeting, people like that, because the more people like that will not only help Labour's chances of being elected, but it gives the impression that Labour are in charge and they're moderate and they can handle all these big issues that as a country we'll be facing. But unfortunately, all the time that we got these far left groups in the party and them with the presences they've got on social media, especially, unfortunately, I think it's just going to carry on. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say this week, really. I'll be back later this week with a few more videos reacting to the first Sunak and Starmer PMQs today. That's in a couple of hours, of course. And then whatever comes out of the budget statement on Monday, if it's still going to go ahead, what spending cuts will Jeremy Hunt have to do? How much will the resources be depleted? We'll have to wait and see. But that's all for next week. And as I say, I'll give my reactions to the first PMQs between Starmer and Sunak in the next day or so. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter as well. We've just launched on there too. And if you want more of this content, subscribe to us on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.